Welcome back to ToonTV. Today we're diving into Meg Griffin's most bizarre and unforgettable relationships from Family Guy. Meg is the underdog we all know and sometimes pity, and her love life is as chaotic as it is comedic. From dating criminals to getting caught in strange love triangles, Meg's relationships range from humorous to downright shocking. How did Meg end up with such a wild love life? Let's explore some of her worst ever romances. But before we dive deep into the wild world of Meg's love life, take a moment to spread the joy. Hit that like button, share this with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more fun adventures. The unfortunate romance with Luke the convict. One of Meg's most jaw-dropping relationships was with Luke, voiced by actor Dylan Hall. Luke wasn't your average boyfriend, he was an escaped convict. The episode kicks off with Brian and Stewie tailing Meg around town, only to discover that she has a new bad boy in her life. Meg is smitten with Luke and seems thrilled to be dating a dangerous guy, completely ignoring the obvious red flags. In her desperation to feel loved, Meg sends letters and gifts to Luke while he's in jail. When Luke escapes, he immediately shows up at her house, and despite knowing he's a criminal, Meg hides him. She's willing to risk it all just to keep him around, showing how far she'll go for love. But of course, things don't end well. Luke is soon captured again, and Meg ends up in trouble for harboring a fugitive. It's a rough ending, but it's a typical Meg relationship, short-lived, risky, and leaving her worse off than before. The long-suffering Neil Goldman. Next up is Neil Goldman, the nerdy kid who is hopelessly obsessed with Meg. Neil is constantly trying to win her over, and while he's harmless compared to some of her other love interests, his persistence turns into an ongoing joke. Meg rejects Neil time and again, but he doesn't give up, coming up with all sorts of strange ways to impress her. In a twist, Neil eventually starts dating someone else, and this sends Meg into a jealous spiral. Despite never having liked him, Meg suddenly can't stand the idea of Neil being with someone else. She tries everything to get his attention, even though her feelings are far from genuine. It's one of those confusing moments where Meg's desire for love outweighs her logic. This messy love triangle leaves her embarrassed, frustrated, and once again, alone. Imaginary romance with Mario and Luigi. Meg's desperation for love sometimes crosses into the bizarre. In one scene, she claims she's dating both Mario and Luigi from the Super Mario video game series. She's seen fantasizing about Mario, who calls her his princess.
Meg, my princess.
Only for Luigi to show up, declaring his love for her as well. It's a hilariously odd moment, highlighting Meg's tendency to dream up romances, even if they're with fictional characters. It's both funny and sad, as it shows her craving for affection, even from people who aren't real. A strange fling with Jerome. Another shocking revelation in Meg's love life is her brief connection with Jerome, Peter's friend. Peter forgives Jerome for past issues, but he's stunned to find out that Jerome once had a fling with Meg. This unexpected twist adds yet another layer of chaos to her romantic history. While Jerome is more mature, the relationship still doesn't last, leaving Meg disappointed once again. Jerome's brief involvement with her adds to her ever-growing list of complicated and short-lived relationships. The awkward crush on Tom Tucker. Meg has had a long-standing crush on Tom Tucker, the Channel 5 news anchor. In an attempt to get close to him, she even takes a job at the news station. She spends her time there trying to win Tom's affection, bringing him treats, and doing everything she can to charm him. But, as always, things don't go according to plan. Neil, still obsessed with Meg, sneaks into her life once again, clinging to any chance he has to be with her. Despite Meg's lack of interest in him, Neil's persistence remains unshaken. When Meg tries to impress Tom, Neil feels betrayed and even tries to mess with her by spiking her coffee with Sweet and Low as a prank, which she spits out in disgust. The station eventually decides to get rid of both Meg and Neil by assigning them to a dangerous story that nearly gets them killed. This episode is yet another example of how Meg's attempts at romance often spiral into chaos, leaving her embarrassed and defeated. The odd relationship with Jeff the nudist. One of Meg's most unique relationships is with Jeff Campbell, the son of a nudist family. This relationship begins when Peter saves Jeff's father, who is also a nudist, from drowning. As a thank you gesture, the Campbells invite the Griffins over to their home, shocking Peter and Lois with their nudist lifestyle. Despite her parents' discomfort, Meg finds herself intrigued by Jeff's openness. She's happy to overlook his family's nudity because Jeff seems genuinely nice, a rarity in her life. However, Peter and Lois try to embarrass Jeff and drive him away. Eventually, they come around and awkwardly try to accept Jeff and his family's nudity. Though the relationship doesn't last long, it shows how willing Meg is to accept unusual circumstances if it means finding someone who cares about her. Unfortunately, like many of her relationships, it's over before it begins, leaving her disappointed but still hoping for a better connection in the future. The absurd encounter with abstinence advocate Doug. Another unusual love interest is Doug, a seemingly nice guy who follows a strict abstinence pledge. Peter is initially thrilled about this relationship, as Doug's pledge seems to align with Peter's wish to keep Meg safe. However, things take an absurd turn when Meg and Doug explore ways to stay pure while still being close. This leads to the infamous ear sex scene, a classic example of Family Guy's unique humor. Lois eventually steps in, realizing how misguided the whole situation is. She encourages Meg to think for herself and only pursue intimacy when she feels ready instead of following someone else's rules. Although Doug seemed promising at first, this relationship ends like most of Meg's romances, in embarrassment and rejection. The brief spark with Anthony. Meg's brief relationship with Anthony, a seemingly normal guy, holds some promise at first. However, things quickly unravel when Meg's mother Lois steps in. Lois begins flirting with Anthony, which ends up ruining Meg's chances with him. Anthony's betrayal is hurtful, but it's clear that Lois's interference played a significant role in his decision. This relationship shows how even when things seem to be going right for Meg, something or someone ends up ruining it. In this case, it's her mother who disrupts her happiness, adding to the already complicated dynamics in the Griffin family. Meg's journey through love and rejection. Through all her relationships, one thing remains constant: Meg's desperate desire for love and acceptance. She faces constant rejection and judgment, yet she continues to seek connection, no matter how hopeless it may seem. While her family often treats her misfortunes as punchlines, these moments reveal Meg's resilience and sincerity, qualities that go unappreciated by those around her. The show often uses Meg's relationships as comedic relief, but they also serve as a commentary on her need for validation. Despite her repeated failures, Meg's hope for love never completely fades, and she remains determined to find someone who truly appreciates her. And there you have it. Meg Griffin's love life is anything but ordinary. From dating an escaped convict to getting caught up with abstinence advocates and nudists, her romantic escapades are some of the most memorable and cringeworthy moments in Family Guy. So what do you think? Will Meg ever find someone who loves her for who she is? Or is she destined to face heartbreak over and over? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Meg's worst relationships, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to ToonTV for more hilarious content about your favorite animated characters.